at Christy Creek Honey as part of our summer farm road trip. Rob, we thank you for having us here, the Ag for Life team. We're excited to learn more about what you do on the farm.
You're very welcome. We're excited to have you here.
Good, excellent. Let's start by understanding the little bit more about the farm. So tell us about the history of the farm. When did you move here? How did it get started? That sort of thing.
Well, I moved here as a child in 1976.
Okay.
7 or 8 years old or something. It was just a bare quarter of land, and my parents, I have two older brothers, and we moved here and kind of built what you find here now.
Wow.
And we had bees when I was a child. Dad had bees for probably 7 to 10 years. And then he got out of it and didn't have bees, and started up about 6 or 7 years ago with the bees. We had some bees actually move, a swarm moved into the roof of this building, and I saw an opportunity to get some free bees.
Oh!
So that's how we started again.
There you go. So your father sort of inspired you, I guess, as you grew up, having the bees and learning how to handle and manage them?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it back then, and took a long break, but got excited about it when I saw an opportunity here. And
yeah, most people would go, there's bees in there, and that it wouldn't be, I got a great opportunity, free bees. So that started about 6 years ago.
That's right.
So tell me, we'll put that here first, because then let's figure out the name, Christy Creek Honey. So Christy Creek. So what's the story?
Yeah, Christy Creek is the local area here.
Okay.
That this part of the world is known as. Christy Creek, there's a little creek about a half mile that direction that I'm guessing about 80 to 90 years ago the people were settling. There was a young lady, a daughter of one of these settlers who was young and eligible, and all of the eligible bachelors would walk along the creek to go meet Christy. And, that became known as Christy's Creek. Unfortunately, she didn't marry any of them. She moved away and married a Californian, I think.
There you go, right? Yeah, I love it. So then when you start it, so let's go back, and you've got bees, and you're gonna free bees. Let's get started. So how does one enter into the bee business?
I think you have to be get past the nervousness of bees.
Yes.
and be comfortable around bees. I did take a couple of courses. There's a great lady in Calgary, actually, ABC Bees. I took a course from her, and then just built up from there. Took a few more courses. Eventually took some university courses, and then,
like you say, you've always been interested, right? There's an interest in bees and understanding the behavior, and so you started. You mentioned you started with your hive. You bought another hive. Did you buy them local or?
Actually, through ABC Bees out of Calgary, they have they supply them from. I think they come from BC.
Or how does that work?
People will phone. Bees. When a hive is really successful, they want to split, and that's how hives reproduce hives.
Oh, okay.
So a swarm is just a reproduction process where half the bees will stay in the old colony and half of them will move out and start a new hive somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
And so I'll get calls from people saying, I got a swarm of bees underneath my shingle, underneath my eaves or something, and I'll go and pick them up and bring them back.
Oh, okay.
Get them that way. Or else you can kind of force a hive to split artificially. You separate them and introduce a queen, or get them to make a new queen, which I'll explain when we're done with the hives. If a hive wants to make a new queen, sometimes they want to replace the old queen because she's getting old. When they get a new queen, they know they're going to be able to make a new queen. They'll just form a ball around the old queen, and they'll overheat her so she dies from heat.
Oh, nasty!
They cook her to death.
So how do you make a new queen?
Well, that's what's going on right here.
Uh-oh.
So this hive is feeling strong and successful. They want to swarm.
Okay.
And so what they're doing, they make these little cells. A queen is longer, and she can't fit going sideways because she'll bump into the honeycomb beside. So they always make them going straight down. And so they'll make little queen, they're called queen cups. They're normally about half that size. And what they want to do is grab one of those tiny worms and move it down into one of these cells. Again, it has to be a female.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll move it down, and then they feed it about 10 times more food than a normal worker would get, and that will trigger it so that it will turn into a queen bee. So that's the main way I've built up.
Interesting.
Hives.
And how many hives do you have today?
Right now I have 12.
Okay. Yeah. And so you've got 12 hives. Do you have to look after them every day? What goes into it?
A bee, if somebody wants to keep bees, should probably plan on getting into the bees every week to 10 days or so.
Okay.
It's not a lot of, if you have 1 or 2 hives, it'd probably be half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on whether you want to stretch it out and enjoy it or you want to do it fast.
Just get the work done.
Yeah. As long as there's flowers and water out there, they'll be fine.
Then they'll go and do their thing and then come back.
Yeah.
And then you just check on them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you miss it, the big risk you have is that your hive will get crowded and swarm and half your bees will fly away with.
Oh, okay. What happens? So take us through a calendar year with the bees.
Yeah. So spring will start in, say, April, early April. You want to open it up and check and see where they're at and see if they have food, because it's the end of a long season when they're just relying on their previous summer's honey storage. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that you're feeding them some sugar water at that time. There's no, until the dandelions come out, mm-hmm. you need to make sure they're getting some sugar water. And then you kind of leave them alone until they start, you clean up the hive. Their winter, lots of bees die off. There'll often be lots of dead bees in the bottom of the hive. They're not able to clean them out during the winter.
Right.
Normally they keep a very clean hive, but they need time. So you help them out by cleaning out the hive. So that's sort of the spring feeding, making sure they're a good population, and then leave them alone just to do their thing and to build up population. The queen will be very, very busy in the spring, laying lots of eggs to build up the population for summer. Then you get into summer, and as soon as the flowers start blooming, you get the dandelion is the important one. In the pussy willow, where there is a supply of pollen, which they feed. Pollen they need to feed to their baby bees, mm-hmm. And then the flowers is the nectar source for honey. So that's, you're just kind of monitoring the flowers. As soon as you can, you want to stop feeding them sugar water. Kind of staying ahead of them, making sure the hive is you can add boxes or supers to it. I'll explain that down there. Making sure that you're having plenty of room for the bees, so that they have space. If they get crowded, they'll want to swarm, so you want to give them lots of space. That's through the summer. You can start extracting honey in probably mid-July. As fall comes along, you'll find the hives that have produced a significant amount of honey that you want to leave them enough for them to get through the winter. Yeah. But then the excess you have the opportunity to remove and extract, and then there's some treatment in the fall for the Varroa mite, mm-hmm. and some other common issues that.
And how do you treat them? Is that in the feed?
Yeah, there's two different ways. The Varroa mite is an actual little tiny bug, a little mite that lives in the hives and on the bees. And so to kill them, there's 3 different ways that I'm aware of. One is it's called a miticide, which is a pesticide. Okay. I don't use that one. I'm not opposed to it, but some of my customers don't like the idea of putting pesticides into a hive. Sure. So it's never done when they're producing honey. You never treat when there's honey in there. You can treat it with an acid vapor. Okay. So, and that's what I use. It's basically a little electric frying pan with a bit of this acid crystals in it that you heat up inside there. Mm-hmm. Everything is blocked off. The bees can't get out. It vaporizes and fills the whole hive with this vapor that kills the mites. Yeah. Doesn't do any damage to the bees. And then it knocks the mite population down. So there's you might have a few left, but most of them are gone then. Okay. Yeah. And then the third way is sort of the natural organic way. It's queens lay 2 types of eggs. Fertilized egg, which turns into a female worker, or an unfertilized egg, which turns into a male, called a drone. Fertilized a worker develops in 21 days, a drone develops in 24 days.
Okay.
And the mites actually are able to tell which is going to be a drone and which is going to be a worker. And they prefer drones because they're able to lay one more egg in that extra 3 days. So in a worker cell, when the worker is developing, the mite will lay 4 eggs. The first one's a male, and then 3 female eggs. They develop, and then when the bee emerges out of her cell, they've gone through the whole life cycle. They've mated, and out come 3 pregnant mites that are ready to hop into the next cell.
Oh my gosh!
But in a drone cell, she's able to lay 1 male and 4 females.
Okay.
And so they prefer males, and so you can take advantage of that by putting and drone cells are bigger round because a drone is a bigger bee, so they make a bigger cell to raise drones in. And so you can trick the bees by putting in comb that has bigger cells. And so when she's laying eggs, she just, if it's this tight, I lay a fertilized egg. If it's this big, I lay an unfertilized egg. So you can trick them into making all of these large size honeycomb, and then the queen will lay all drone cells in there. And then the mites will be attracted to that, and so they'll go to those drone cells, and then you let them develop. Drones are, from a beekeeper point of view, almost useless.
Yeah,
you have to have them around if you're going to have queens that need to mate, but otherwise they're just mouths eating honey that don't do any work. And so you can let the mites go in and develop, and then once they've capped it and the worms are going through their metamorphosis, you can take it out of the hive and put it in a freezer, and then it will kill all of the drones, but all of those mites as well.
Right.
So it's a good way to get all those mites out of your hive. Problem is, if you forget it, then you've suddenly made your mite population 25% worse than it was before. If you miss it somehow. So.
Okay, so then we're getting them ready for winter, and
so you treated them. Then this far north, you'd need to insulate the hive. What I do is I have straw bales on the bottom.
It's cozy.
So some straw bales, and then the hive. It's wrapped in sort of a plastic insulation that's sandwiched by black plastic.
Okay.
So that's wrapped, and then I have a winter lid. So it's just a thicker lid with insulation in it. There's an entrance at the top and an entrance at the bottom, so that there's airflow can get through, because the bees are in there, they're breathing, and that creates humid air.
Right.
And if you don't allow that humid air to get out, then it will condense on the top and then rain on them and kill them.
And
So a wet bee is a dead bee.
Yeah, there you go.
Most people will have an entrance at the top. I know that there are people out there that will say, no, you're wrong, you don't do that. But most people have an entrance on the top. And then you feed them in the wintertime. Very thick sugar water, two parts sugar, 1 part water. It's very, it's a lot of sugar. And then about Thanksgiving, somewhere in that range, it's getting too cold at night for them to really take a lot more sugar water. So then you just kind of leave them and pull the sugar and
see you in the spring.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about bees. We hear a lot about bees dying off, and a big concern about bees. So I imagine you follow that and the research and the studies and yes.
I do.
Yeah.
I talked about the Varroa mite. They complicate everything for a bee.
Yeah.
And the reason that is because when the bee is developing, and they just figured this out in the last 3 years, I think, when the bee is going through its metamorphosis process, if we did a dissection on any honeybee anyway, when we open it up, there's little globs of white globs in there that are called fat bodies.
Okay.
They look like little balls of fat. They're actually the bee's equivalent of their liver.
Okay.
And so when the mites are feeding on them, that's what they eat. They'll chew a hole through the side and they'll eat those fat bodies. And so then the problem becomes when the bee comes out, it looks normal, looks healthy, but it doesn't have a healthy liver.
Right.
And so if there's a disease comes through, they'll they don't have the liver to help them to deal with that,
Right.
or pesticides or herbicides or something. They'll bring that back into the hive. They don't have the healthy livers to be able to.
Okay,
to
so
process
this
that
is
out.
starting
So
from
it's-
those mites.
Yeah. So everything that could go wrong for a bee is amplified by mites.
Okay, yeah. So it sort of says, hey, like if I would think about, I've weakened your immune system, now go out, and then of course,
Exactly.
anything they encounter, their body,
Just can't deal with
it just
as
can't
well.
deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that-
interesting.
yeah, that's the big one. What a lot of people don't understand is that honeybees generally are fine, because people like me, I'm a very small beekeeper, but there's a lot of people taking care of a lot of honeybees, and it's an industry that people are putting a lot of research into to make sure that we can continue this industry. So honeybees generally have people that are taking care of them, treating them, making sure there's not a lot of mites, protecting them. So they, I think, are, for the most part, people agree that honeybee populations are stable and actually growing and are fine. It's the wild bees that are in danger, because a honeybee and a bumblebee land together in a flower. The mite, sometimes they're actually they're riding on the bee. It might hop over to the bumblebee. Nobody is taking care of the bumblebee, because they're wild. They're, nobody really. Those are the ones that are more in danger than honeybees. And so they're trying to do research and figure out. There is some exciting research in terms of ways to treat bees and to improve their odds. But to get that out to wild bees is a struggle.
That would be very difficult, absolutely. So, and it's interesting because it goes back. I'm glad you shared about the mites, because that's where we got this problem, right? Really, right?
And they weren't here before.
Right.
Honeybees are an introduced species, actually, and so now if you're paying attention, if you're reading the articles on honeybees and bee health in general, there's starting to be a bit of a growing argument that maybe not everybody should have a beehive in their backyard, because we're competing with the bumblebees and the other wild not just bumblebees. There's lots of different native bees in Canada: wasps, hornets, bees, mason bees. There's lots of solitary bees. All of them are competing for the same nectar sources, pollen sources. And if everybody has a beehive in their backyard, honeybees populations explode. Huge. A strong hive. Like I mentioned, 80 to 100,000 bees, whereas a bumblebee nest, 100 to 300 bees. And so it gets a lot more. If you have a lot of honeybees, it's more difficult for the other bees.
For the others, we got to balance it. I can see that.
Yeah. So.
And how long on average does a bee live?
It depends. If you're a queen bee, you can live 3, 4, some up to 5 years. That's very, very rare, but 3, 4 years for a queen bee. A worker bee, on average, is about 45 days. They work themselves. It's a good name. They're working all the time, and you can find an old bee, and her wings will be frayed on the end, and they just work themselves to death. The males, the drones, have a really charmed life. They don't have to work. They don't have to do anything. They don't even feed themselves. They just get taken care of. But their lives are right about now. The hives will be looking, saying, "We're not raising any more queens, and all you guys do is sit around and eat honey." And they drag them out of the hive and throw them over into the grass.
No way!
So I wouldn't be surprised when we're down there if we find some dead drones in front of the hives.
That's like, hey, you got freeload enough. You're out.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah. So well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and
absolutely
allowing us to come and learn about the bees. It is fascinating. So we do appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad to share it with you.